Okay, we're live.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to our school committee meeting. We have member Kissinger, member Donovan, member Green, member Allen, member McFadden, myself. We have Superintendent Aronakis, Director of Administration Bob Ross, Jeremy Taylor, our Director of Technology, Legal Counsel Michael Pollack, and our Director of Curriculum, Dr. Ahern. Okay, so we will get started. Let's see. I guess I'll officially call to order. I apologize, I didn't do that. Okay, so we have open forum, and I don't believe we have any visitors on the call or on the Zoom meeting. I don't see anybody. Jeremy, I don't see anybody extra on, do you?
No, I don't.
Okay, so we will go right to the consent agenda. Jim?
Okay. So under the original agenda, we have the approval of minutes, regular meeting minutes from August 25th. We also have two appointments. One is an athletic appointment for girls volleyball. This is if it is permitted by the Interscholastic League. Typically that sport runs this season. It is not allowed to run, but we are told that they're trying to have some kind of a modified season later in the school year. So again, if the season runs, then this would be our volleyball coach. And then we had the split clerical position that was budgeted. It was two positions that were reduced and created one position. One of our TAs has moved into that. We also have a leave of absence from our elementary music teacher, military leave, one of our recess assistants. We have a resignation for the purpose of retirement, one of our teacher assistants. And then at the last meeting, we called back a teacher on the recall list, and she has resigned, accepted a position in another district. So then we have recalls. One of the recalls is a Council 94 member, the only one that we had on layoff, and he replaces one of the two positions that were vacated by the move of the TA into the clerical position and then the retirement of the other TA. We have our monthly bills, and then we have a number of homeschool approvals. There was also a supplemental packet. I'm sorry, this is the time of year when lots of things are happening. But we received a new leave of absence request from another one of our recess assistants. These are all so that they can be home with their families. We have a new recall, and that is to replace the individual that resigned after we recalled her at the last meeting, and one additional homeschool approval. And that covers it.
Okay. Anyone need anything pulled or any questions? Everybody's good?
Just had a question about the bills.
Yep, go ahead, Terry.
I had a question on page 3 of the invoices for Coastline EAP.
Bob, do you know what that one is?
So
I'm unmuting. There you go. Jim, that's the student contract, the person, the individual we hire for the students. I'm having a brain freeze right now, but she does the student intervention assistance. She works up generally out of the library.
The substance abuse counselor?
There you go. Thank you.
so it's actually somebody that's on site at what school?
Junior, senior, 4 days a week.
Okay, and provides assistance just to the students of that building?
At the junior, senior high school, yes.
Okay, do you have any, I suppose you wouldn't. I had sent an email to Bob and Jim earlier today. I apologize for it being late. Have any, I understand the nature of the services, so I understand the confidentiality. Is there anything that you could share in terms of frequency of contact or how often the services are used, or is it just somebody on staff that people, it's a drop by?
It's a little bit of both. So whenever we have any kind of a concern with students, and this includes things like vaping, instead of punishing and suspending, which we've been trying not to do as frequently given the new laws that are out. And plus we want to try to keep kids in school and address the root of the problems. We have been working with families and working with students to have on-site counseling and substance abuse support. Those meetings are all confidential, and I don't have any kind of a report on what was covered with certain students, but I know that she is utilized very regularly at the junior and senior high school. And it's not just for kids who themselves might have concerns, but kids who live with individuals who may have some addiction issues as well. So the person that was in that role, we've actually hired now as our new social worker. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
So this would be a new person, but up until just a few weeks ago, the person in that role was also a certified social worker. So having that additional clinician at the school has been really helpful as well.
Is this any overlap in services?
No, she's strictly substance abuse, whereas the other individuals are doing more clinical work.
And Coastal EAP is actually an agency?
Yeah. Yes.
And the individual from that agency is on site 4 days a week, did you say?
4 days. Yep. And
All
what?
day?
All day. And that bill that you see is the annual cost. That's not a quarterly or semi-annual. That's the full expense for having that service 4 days a week on site.
Understood. And is that for services solely available to students, families, or staff?
So I don't know if any families have had any interaction. It is typically for student. It's a student assistance counselor. I know that she is available to staff, but I would have no idea. That would be like a walk-in kind of a service. We've not made any referrals.
Okay, I just wasn't sure to what degree the district hired that, because the EAP stands for Employee Assistance Program.
Yep.
So I wasn't sure if they were serving our district in that capacity as well.
No,
Well,
they may be, but not through this particular individual. This individual is strictly student assistance. In my tenure, we have used the service, but it wasn't through a person who was on site on our campus.
And this isn't supported by any kind of grant funding?
No.
Okay.
I
Thank
know
you.
that position, Terry, I know that position also takes the lead on the, on VASA, Varsity Students Against Substance Abuse.
That's true.
Understood.
Because I did, yep, because I know Francesca took part in that. And then she identifies leadership conferences for that group. I think most of them take place at URI, but it's a nice program that she runs with that.
Mhm.
And those, they support the district with the skills that they learn at these conferences and what they gain from being part of VASA. So that's a nice little plus.
Thank you.
Bob, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to echo what Jim had said, that in my time here, I know that we've used them just as a resource to direct us to employees that were looking for an EAP. So whether it was because they had substance abuse or anger issues or whatever that was impacting their job performance, and they were like, I need some outside counseling, we use them as a resource to say, who would we go to? And then that's covered through their benefits. But as far as contracting as an HR department with an EAP, we've looked at it, but we have extremely low utilization. Could that change? It could change, given the world where people's heads are these days.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Everybody's good? Okay, so if we can have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Do we have a second? Member Donovan, the second. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll do our roll call vote. So we have Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen,
Aye.
Member McFadden,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, correspondence, I do not believe we have any. 2019-20 budget projection.
So I just included that for the committee because we've pretty much booked the year for 2020. The auditors are coming tomorrow. They start in earnest tomorrow. So there may be some movement as a result of their, their process. But for right now, taking into account where we ended with the state education aid, and then our Medicaid and our other revenue sources versus our expenses, the numbers you're looking at, I don't expect them to move too much further.
Any questions? Everybody's good? Okay. 2020-21 budget.
Nothing to
Anything on that?
report yet.
All right. I have a question on that. So last year, our income for group home aid was $125,000. I think we're projecting that to be the same figure this year. However, last year, when I visited the group home, they informed me that a longtime resident last year, 2019, had been replaced. So they left, and in came a new one. So how many people are there? 8. Okay. So if memory serves me right, Jim and Bob, I believe we've had conversations that new residents of the group home would get charged back in full for full services to the municipality of origin. Does this at all sound familiar? In full.
Not
What?
only does it sound familiar, it's 100% accurate.
Okay, so then that being the case, should not, and now that was last year, and it was my understanding they replaced it. So if that's not the case, and this is subject to the school department's verification, should we not for this year be seeing something more than revenue for the group home aid for beyond $125,000?
No. So
Why not?
because the group home aid is a specific amount of money that is identified in the law, and that is given to the district where the group home is located, and it's based on the number of beds. So we have
Right, which is not, okay, go ahead. That's not what I'm talking about, but okay. All right.
Okay, so
Hello?
let me just try to finish the whole story and then you can tell me what you're talking about if I didn't understand you. So the number of beds multiplied by that amount of money is pretty stable, and that comes to the district where the group home is located. That is a completely separate situation than what who is responsible for the children who reside in the group home. So we're getting that group home aid regardless of who's responsible for the kids in the group home.
Okay.
So now, when we talk about the kids in the group home, there are a total of, on paper, 8 beds. They've actually increased that to 9. They did that last year. When they increased it to 9, they added a student from another district that we have no responsibility for because that student fell under the new law, which assigns responsibility to the district where the child originally resided. So that 9th student is not ours. And then, yes, we did have one long-term resident that left last year, and that student was replaced. And that student is also not our responsibility at all. Transportation, education, tuition, we have no responsibility for that child either. But there are still 9 beds in that location, and we are still receiving the 9 beds times the amount of money per bed that is outlined in the law.
So it should be beyond the 125,000 if there's 9, because the 125 was always based on 8. But what I'm talking about is I remember that the total tuition, because I believe all of them were outsourced, right? All 8, now 9.
Correct.
And that was of the $800,000, $900,000 figure.
Correct.
So you can point out to me in an email where we're actually seeing a reduction. Remember the piece of paper you sent us, you gave us that had about, for total tuition for the students to be about $800,000?
Yes. Yep.
So we should be actually seeing from that original figure a decline, correct? If you were to do an accounting?
So the decline would be that the expense for that child's transportation and the expense for that child's tuition have not been recorded because there is no expense for that child who was replaced. So you're not
right. So you should see a reduction. So if you did an accounting on the total number of kids that are in the group home, which is 9 now, correct, it would be something like, is it fair to say it's probably $100,000 and the $860,000 you quoted? So it would be something like, I don't know, 700,000. Would that be fair? The total cost?
Yeah, about 750. That would be a fair assumption.
All right.
You want me to produce that spreadsheet with the new figures for the children that
I think that's fair. Yep.
Okay.
I think that's, since it's such a large amount of money, I wouldn't mind seeing that in the next meeting.
Okay.
That piece of paper.
I can do that.
That answers my question. So since we have 9 now, should we not be seeing an increase in that 125,000, or is that part of the money that goes to the originating city or town?
No, that money, it always stays around that amount, but each year it is adjusted. So if there is a period of time, for example, where the bed is not occupied, there's an adjustment that's made to what we receive.
Mm-hmm.
So the 125 is more of an average of, on an annual basis, what we expect to receive, even though there are 9 beds. And we did see an increase a couple of years back when that, or maybe it was last year or the year before, when that 9th bed was added. They did make an adjustment for us. But again, the adjustment is based on the percentage of the year that the bed is actually occupied. And so when there's movement, there's always a period of time when they're waiting for the next child to move in. So we don't always budget the entire, 9 beds times whatever the amount of money is per year, because we anticipate there'll be some gaps that will occur and there'll be a reduction, and we don't want to budget too high.
there. So when that piece of paper comes to the committee in the next meeting, you'll have the higher figure, which was last year's, the lower figure, which will be this year's. And do you anticipate any other movements of children out of the group home this year?
I would have to, no, I'd have to look at the ages again, because they do age out by their 22nd birthday. And we know the last couple of years when I've been presenting that information that a number of the children that reside there were close. I believe that we are anticipating at least one more who is aging out, but I will have to verify that by looking at the birthdays. And I'll include that information on the spreadsheet about anticipated changes. And again, when the child ages out, we're expecting, under most circumstances, that child is replaced by somebody who is not originally a resident of either of our towns. And so that would be expenses that we no longer incur. But if by chance a resident of one of our towns moves into that group home, then we are 100% responsible. So it also depends on who moves into the vacant bed, on whether or not we'll experience any savings.
I got that.
Yeah.
All right.
But
I'm done with that.
I'll give you that spreadsheet at the next meeting, no problem.
Yeah, the whole committee. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it can just be placed in as correspondence. Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Bob, did you have anything to report on the 2021 budget, or you were nothing new going on? Or Jim? Bob, you're muted.
My wife's pleasure. No, I have nothing at this point.
Okay.
Next meeting.
Okay. All right, we will move on. Let's see. So we have new business. We have some technology leases. Just to let everybody know. So these were already approved in our budget when we had our when we approved our budget for 2021. Member Donovan is required to sign the finance agreements for these leases. So I asked that they be put on the agenda so that Bob can just explain some of the details to the committee.
So, and Jeremy's on the line too. He can jump in if he needs to help. But basically the information is included in your packet. There are two leasing companies, American Capital and Apple Finance, and there are three different lease agreements, if you will. They're really part of the refresh of our regular technology plan and additional to address our distance learning requirements, all in the budget. We haven't had to have the secretary or the clerk of the school committee sign in probably like 4 or 5 years, but it showed up this year in the lease agreement. So that's why they're being brought forward to the school committee. Because there is, if you look at the lease agreements, the pages that I included, the certificates of incumbency is what I'm talking about. Particularly on the American Capital lease, there is specific language about the governing body taking, exacting language. So exacting action, I mean, so.
And Bob, these are just the leases that replace the expiring leases. So you recall when we did the technology upgrade, one of the things that we began to do was include the leases and then the refresher leases in the operating budget. So we never got to the point where we had super old technology that was breaking down all the time, and then we had to find some miracle influx of cash to take care of the technology issues. So this is we have everything on leases. When the leases expire, typically the devices go back, which we didn't do this year because we wanted to have the devices to give to families for distance learning. But under typical conditions, they go back, we replace the lease, the new devices come, they're on a new lease, and it just, it's a recursive process. So these are to take care of the fact that the previous leases all expired at the end of the previous school year.
And Bob, it's standard for you to work with legal counsel on these licensing agreements, correct?
Correct. So Andrew has gone through his portion, the trust went through their portion regarding certificates of insurance, and then this is the part for the certificate of incumbency.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Claudine, I do.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
I know I've asked this question before, but the iPads are for the junior high. Am I correct?
I can speak to that.
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
then
Go ahead,
the
Jeremy.
Macs are I'm guessing are the teachers.
No, these are not teacher max. So
Oh.
most of the iPads are for the junior high. We also have some iPads sprinkled throughout the district, so the teachers can use them in small groups. And then the Macs are replacing our Mac computer labs,
Oh, okay.
and the Chromebooks are 1-to-1 for the 9th graders, carts of Chromebooks for the rest of the school district.
So the Mac labs are in addition to the one-to-one devices.
Yes, so particularly at the high school, they have some, the computer applications classes have some pretty intense applications that they use that don't necessarily run well on a Chromebook. So that's why we have the computer applications classes in computer labs.
Okay.
Gary, you have your hand raised.
I do, thank you. I have just a couple questions. What relationship do these leases have to the funds that we have committed for lease buyouts, if any?
None. I mean, instead of returning those devices, we kept them to use for distance learning, and this is the new lease that would replace all that equipment. So had we shipped it all back, we would be executing these leases to replace it. Because we kept it for distance learning, we're still executing these leases to replace it. But the old devices are being used
So
for distance learning at home, where we wouldn't normally do that.
We have about $154,000 committed to lease buyouts. Is that no longer needed? Or is that different?
That was executed for fiscal year ending July or June 30th, 2020. So those were with those funds. That was a fiscal year 20 expenditure. This is a fiscal year 21 expenditure.
So Terry, we have approximately 30% of our elementary families that have opted for full distance learning.
Mm-hmm,
We have a number of families at the secondary level that have done the same.
mm-hmm.
And so the devices that we bought out, instead of shipping back, the old devices are the ones that we're loaning out to the families that have chosen full distance learning, so that we weren't purchasing brand new devices, because that's where we were in the cycle, and then unpacking them and sending them home immediately. We wanted to use the old devices so that we could have the fresh replacements in the classrooms in the hands of the children that are in.
Okay. So is that being tracked as a possible COVID expense?
Yes. The buyout is, because we're using the buyout to
Exactly.
yeah, we have that on our spreadsheet that we're tracking.
Okay. And as far as these leases being expenses that were included in the current fiscal year's budget, were the financing costs included in that budget?
Yes.
Yes, they were.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Just, I would just add for the core, you asked about the 21 budget earlier, but one of the things with our new ERP system is, and we've instructed everybody who's requisitioning, that there's a drop-down box where we can designate the project that an expense is being charged to, and we created the COVID-19 field, so we're tracking, you know, any expenditures that could potentially be COVID-19 reimbursable through any of the grants that might or are available. We're going to be able to run reports and sit down as a admin team and go over those. So it's kind of a good functionality. So you're spot on with that question, Terry.
And Terry, there's one additional connected item to the 2021 budget as well. I previously reported that we submitted the first grant for reimbursement for COVID expenses. That was about 144,000 is what we had. So that has been approved. That review has already happened at the state level and it was approved.
Great.
Second round, which was the round that we knew was coming first, it just took them a lot longer to get it to us, is now available. And it is 170,000 additional dollars that we can write for COVID expenses as well. And we certainly have enough to write to, you know, we could just use the technology and pretty much be done. But we are going to take care of another $170,000 worth of added expenses once we submit this new grant that was just released to us. I want to say at the beginning of last week, but we haven't gotten to it yet, given that, you know, we're in the middle of opening at this point with teachers. So it's been a little busy.
Good, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, anyone else have any questions? Everybody's good? Okay. So we got 3 different motions. I'll go ahead and read them. So there's a motion to approve the American Capital 3-year lease in the amount of $198,727.92 or $66,242.64 annually for 760 HPI Chromebooks, licensing and white glove commissioning, and 12 core Chromebook carts. So if we can have a motion for that in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen,
Aye.
Member McFadden.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. So motion carries. Okay, then we have a motion to approve the, if I can have a motion to approve the Apple Finance 4-year lease in the amount of $119,618.64 or $29,904.66 annually for 87 iMac computers. We're going to have a motion in a second.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Let's see, roll call vote. Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen,
Aye.
Member McFadden.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. And then if we can have a motion to approve the Apple Finance 3-year lease in the amount of $154,606.50 or $528.83 annually, and 517 iPads. So if we can have a motion in a second.
So moved.
Donovan, second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen,
Aye.
Member McFadden.
Aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. Very good. Thank you. Coordinate that paperwork with Terry. Terry, you're all set to coordinate all that with Bob.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And
I can just fax them to you,
thank you.
email them to you, Terry, you can sign, and then are you multitasking right now? I can,
Yes.
Yes, sir. But that's fine. Yes, you can email them to me and I'll sign them and email them back to you. The originals back to you as well.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to unfinished business. We have the 2020-21 reentry planning updates. Jim?
So this continues to be a work in progress. We did have our visit by the Department of Health, they actually scheduled the visit when we were in the middle of orientation day. And we passed the review. Bob was present and Bailey was present during that discussion. We did have to make some modifications at Wawaloon based on the airflow and the air exchange rates. That's something that they're paying really close attention to. And it had to do with box fans. So it was a fairly insignificant cost for us. But we did take care of that. Now it has been requested that we invite them back. And that they look at a couple of, especially a couple of rooms that are of concern to some of our teachers. So I believe that the Department of Health will be coming back and we'll have members of the union present, and I'll be present for that review. I don't anticipate that they're going to tell us anything different, but so be it. If that's what helps people to be comfortable, then we want that to be the case. So that's happening. We also have the visit from the National Guard. That's the Operations Support Center that the governor has talked about at some of her briefings. They are coming for a meet and greet during the week of the 14th, I think. Actually, I booked the 15th, the Tuesday. They will be on site just to do a walkthrough, to meet the administrative team, and perhaps give us some additional recommendations. But not based on the safety and the reentry requirements. So that is happening. We are continuing to work through some memoranda of understanding, memoranda of agreement relative to some of the changes that we've put in place to address the needs that are so different this coming school year. So for example, we have a number of staff members who have voluntarily moved into different positions, and that's to accommodate some distance learning assignments to teachers that may have some health concerns. So we've done that. We have reduced the total number of teacher assistants based on the fact that we have a number of kids that will not be in the buildings, particularly at the secondary level with the hybrid model. And rather than laying off the teacher assistants and then having to hire additional custodians, we put in a COVID support position. And we have 4 members of the Council 94 bargaining unit that have taken that position for a year. So no layoffs in that group either. We are working with the bus company on the routes and making sure that we're in compliance with the guidelines around ridership, and that is looking really good at this point. The routes that we have mapped out, or that Scott has mapped out, have ridership at or below the required numbers, and that is if every child who is eligible to ride actually rides. We have taken out all of the distance learning kids already. And if all of the rest of the kids ride on the days that they're coming to school, we are in compliance. So we suspect that the numbers will be slightly lower because some families will still opt to drive their children in. So ridership and bus routes looks excellent. Staffing right now is a little bit of an issue. Nothing that we're not working on, but we had a couple of leaves of absence that came at the last minute with our recess assistants. So those positions, actually all 4 of them that we have in the district, need to be replaced. 3 of them are on a leave of absence to be with their families, with their children, and 1 of them retired, and that was part of the consent agenda today. So with the retirement and the move of one of our TAs into the vacant clerical position, we called back 1 person who was on layoff, and one of the 1 remaining recess aide moved into the COVID support position. So that vacated the 4th and final recess assistant. So all 4 of those positions are vacant. They've already been posted. And then we still do not have an identified nurse at the junior senior high school, which is problematic. We have interviewed 3 separate times. We have offered the position 2 separate times, and it's been declined by the individual that we offered it to. I have conducted a 3rd round of interviews. We've identified an exceptional candidate, and she will just need to be paid at a higher rate of pay. I believe that she is very well worth the investment. We need a nurse at this point, and we have tried desperately to find somebody. We do not have a certified school nurse teacher. However, RIDE has a new certificate option for a registered school nurse. That would be a nurse that doesn't have any teaching responsibility. That's how we would get this person certified. And she happens to be a resident of one of our towns, and will be a great addition to the high school, junior, senior high school. So I'll be bringing that name forward at the next meeting as well. But that will be the last that I know of, the last staffing decision that needs to be made, other than the recess aides, which again, as I said, are already posted. Yeah, so other than that, we have had now 4 straight days of orientation and professional development. We've had 2 of those days virtual, and 2 of the days have been live. And even under the live days, we do have periods of time when teachers are kind of logging in remotely for some of the instruction, and then working together to have deeper discussions about the new learning. That will continue tomorrow. And then there are 2 days where the teachers have for planning prior to the arrival of kids. So it's 7 straight days of work with adults before the kids come. And, you know, understandably, the teachers, you know, they're worried about reentry. They want to make sure that they get this right. They have a lot of things on their mind around getting their classroom ready, getting their class list ready, and so forth. But we're trying to work with them on balancing the professional development needs that exist around social emotional learning, around addressing unfinished learning for the kids that have gaps based on the, the sudden closing of schools last year. So it's been a challenge for them, but they've hung with us strong. We're going to give them those couple of days for planning at the end, and then the kids will return on the 14th. That's where we are. So lots going on, but we continue to move towards being fully ready for reentry on the 14th.
Well, that sounds good, Jim. I have a question regarding, are we going to be able to, or can you provide us any meaningful breakdown as to what students are participating in a hybrid model? What percentage of students are participating in a full day face-to-face learning? Like, yeah, I think K through 6 is it full, or let's skip kindergarten, but 1 through 6 is full face time, correct?
Correct. So I'll give you the breakdown of the whole district. The governor gave the approval for our district and most districts to open under our full return plan, which was submitted to the state. We did give parents options. We have approximately 30 to 32%. It has fluctuated a little bit, but 30 to 32% of our families across the board, K through 12, have opted for full distance learning. And we have, at the elementary level, assigned some of our classroom teachers to fully remote learning classrooms, because we have at least a full class at every grade level. So when you take out the 30%, I'm just going to round it off to 30% of the families that are full distance learning, the remaining children at K through 6 have been invited to return 5 days a week. And about 93% of the families are sending their children 5 days a week. But there are still a few that are on the fence, and they've opted to only send their children 2 to 3 days a week, just to kind of get a sense of, what the district looks like when the kids are returning. So hopefully they will they'll be comfortable with that and make the decision to allow their kids to come 5 days, but it's really their choice. Then at the secondary level, junior and senior, we are doing a full hybrid plan. The hybrid plan is that Exeter is going to school on designated days, Mondays and Tuesdays, and alternating Wednesdays. West Greenwich kids will go to school Thursday and Friday and alternating Wednesdays. And that's our full reentry plan, because we would not be able to bring all of the children into the building at the same time and meet all of the requirements according to the guidelines, since the kids cannot stay in stable pods at the secondary level. However, even though we have that hybrid model at the junior senior, we have invited approximately 10 to 12% of the children to attend school every day, regardless of their town of residence. And those are the kids that are that require that additional face-to-face support. So we wanted to make sure that that was an option that was available for them. So that's what we have going on. And preschool is remaining as it always has been. It's a half-a-day program. The class sizes are small, and for the families that are opting to send their children in, we are open and available, and there's no change to that program at all.
I was listening to the governor, and there's basically no football, but there is cross-country being allowed, among some other things.
No football and no volleyball. Those are the two sports that we are not allowed to have. Now, she may allow them in a modified sense during a different season, say the spring or pre-spring. But in terms of those athletic teams playing this season, there are no. The other athletic teams, tennis, soccer, I think it's girls soccer. It is girls soccer. And
Cross country?
Yeah.
cross country. They will be shortened, modified seasons, and most of the games will be on Saturdays with some safety restrictions that are in place. We haven't gotten all of the details on that yet, but there will be some significant savings based on the fact that we have far less transportation responsibility, fewer contests, therefore fewer referees that we're paying for. And then in some cases, the teams, we're just going to go with a single coach for the modified season versus replacing vacant JV assistant coaching positions. So that's where we are at this point.
So normally you have coaching for cross country, say, since it's active 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. But now I'm only bringing in a particular town half the time. How does a student who wants to participate in cross country have a 5 day a week workout when they're only physically at the school 2 days and every other Wednesday? How does that work?
So they can't come to school because we're telling them they can't come to school. However, if the governor and the Interscholastic League are allowing the sport to run and there is a practice or an event on a day when they're typically not in school, they can come to school and participate. And that's their home, but they are still considered in school. They're distance learning from home that day. So they are present in school, just off campus. Therefore, they can still participate in the athletic event.
So transportation for Exeter on Friday is provided for cross-country practice by the student to get to the high school, right? That's what you're telling me, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Leah, I know you have a question. Hold on. Go ahead, Paul.
No, I said I think I understand that.
Okay.
I just wanted to know how it was executing.
Okay.
So it's basically up to the student, the athlete, to provide his own transportation on those days where he's physically not in the school, as is the case of Exeter on Thursdays and Fridays.
Right.
And Is there any increase in membership on the cross-country team?
I don't know the answer to that question. I can find out for you, but I don't know.
It would be gratifying to find out that our athletes would find a benefit to the cross-country team. Yeah, that would be interesting. I'd like to see that.
Okay.
Lee,
Thank
go
you.
ahead.
Jim,
Yes.
whose responsibility is it to keep track of all these students and all these various learning modes?
So let me just make sure that I understand the question. You want me to start at the elementary school and then tell me if I'm telling you the information that you want to hear?
Yeah,
So at the elementary school, most of the kids have chosen one extreme or the other, right? So they've
Right.
either chosen full distance learning, and we have assigned full distance learning teachers. So they have a grade 2 classroom, a grade 4 classroom, taught by a certified teacher of that grade level remotely. The teacher is remote, the kids are remote, easy. Then we have 4 classrooms at every grade level that are in person. So, 4 teachers are on site at each grade level, and the kids that are here for in-person learning are divided equally into those 4 classrooms. The majority of the children are here 5 days a week. There are a handful at each grade level where the parents are not sending them in 5 days a week. But they are still the responsibility of the classroom teacher. That's something that we need to continue to work through. However, we anticipate that throughout the entire year, we are going to see kids moving in and out of quarantine, having to stay home because they have a sore throat, a symptom that they in the past would just come to school and deal with. They're not allowed to come to school. The teacher may not be allowed to come to school. There is going to be a constant ebb and flow of students in the classroom based on the rules that we need to follow. So on any given day, our elementary teachers should be expecting a number of children who are not able to be present, either because the family hasn't sent them or because they're required to stay home according to the guidelines that are put out there. That's going to be a huge challenge. So that's elementary. At the secondary level, the kids are all assigned to a teacher, and the teacher is present every day. And on some days, half of the class will be there, and the other half of the class will be participating remotely, and then it will switch off. So the teacher can almost, and in some cases, the teacher is thinking about almost like running a distance learning kind of a classroom with the benefit of half of the kids being present for face-to-face support, and then that will trade off. There are several other options that teachers have looked at. It's actually been one of the focus areas of the training that we've done over the past 4 or 5 days. And there's a follow-up to that training also tomorrow that's scheduled. So we've been trying to support sharing different models for how to make that effective at the secondary level. So that's the plan 7 through 12.
okay. I agree with you. It's a challenge.
It's a very big challenge. The teachers are being asked to do a lot. And
Thank you.
okay.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, Michael, I have to ask you a question because there's a comment from a public member in the chat, but I believe he left. Jeremy, do you see Phil still on? Phil K?
I see Phil K.
Is he on the meeting still?
I don't believe so, no.
Yeah, I think he left. So, Michael, how do I handle this? There's basically a question from a public member, but he departed the meeting. You want me to say?
It depends upon how you'd like to. I mean, if the committee wants, it could move to reopen public comment and then read the letter. I mean, typically there shouldn't be any discourse between the public and the committee anyway. So, I mean, that's one way of handling it. Or the committee can just move on because it did have the public comment at the beginning.
And
Okay.
reading the chat, it's really a question that needs to, I think, go to the towns.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in a regular, let's say we were in a regular meeting in person,
Correct.
and a public member had a comment to or a question regarding something we were discussing, I would have the choice to recognize them, correct? Is it the same rules that apply on our virtual meeting?
Yeah, I mean, again, like I don't have a lot of history with this committee, so I apologize if I'm not answering your question. And feel free to just cut me off and make me understand. But typically, as far as the public comment is concerned, people would sign up and speak or submit a letter or whatnot, and the committee can read. And basically, the point is for the public to be able to voice a concern. You can ask a question publicly, but again, there shouldn't be any discourse back and forth. It's my practice to recommend that there be no discourse back and forth, even if that particular item is on the agenda. It should just typically be school committee policy that public comment is a forum. It's an opportunity to voice a concern. And I mean, it can happen. Perhaps someone can be referred to a place. If there is a question that's asked, that person can be referred. I mean, I'm not saying, absolutely, but typically it should be very limited discourse, if any at all. So again, in this situation, acknowledge can everyone see, again, my knowledge of this technology is
If everyone just clicks on the chat, you should be able to see it.
right. And
If can I just reply to say, please?
The chat in it.
Oh, it doesn't. Okay. Can I just reply to the chat and say, please reach out to our superintendent?
Absolutely.
Is that okay?
I see nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
Everybody give me a second. I just want to type this in.
Well, he's no longer here. So
I know, but I want to respond. I don't want to be.
Rather than respond in the chat.
you should just say your response so it's in the recording.
But he
Okay.
has to be present for you to be able to respond to it.
I know, that's what I'm
You
saying.
can watch the video and find out what the response. He could be watching live on YouTube right now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so Phil
I'm
K,
a little
if you're,
confused.
that's okay. Phil K, if you're out there, please reach out to our superintendent with your concern and question. Okay.
Was it? I mean, Claudine, that answers your question, correct? You're okay with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I wanted to respond somehow with like just giving him a resource for
Right.
for some kind of an answer.
And that's fair. Thank you.
Okay.
I would just like to qualify. I have a qualifying question. So when you said a public member, I have no idea what you meant by, Claudine, by public member. But I don't think there's anything that disqualifies anybody so long as Claudine recognizes an individual from asking Jim or Bob, who are non-members of the committee, a question. Is that correct, counsel? In the meeting.
I mean,
Hello?
yeah. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know if you can hear me. That's my question.
No, I
Did
can
you
hear
hear
you.
my question?
I did. Is there anything that would prevent Ms. Panday from recognizing someone in the middle of a meeting? And the answer to that question is no. Now, typically, again, school committee policy is that it just to run an orderly meeting is that there's a
I think you missed my point.
I'm sorry.
So I wouldn't want any kind of a discourse, as you call it, between any member of the committee during the meeting with a member of the public. However, Claudine can recognize a member of the public. I'm not advocating this, but they could ask directly Superintendent Aronakis or Bob directly and get a response. They're not members of the committee, correct?
They are not
That's
members. they are not members of the committee now. You're correct about, I think that, look, it's, if you're going to stick to the agenda, then the agenda should be stuck to, right? And again, is it illegal? I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure. I think it would be bad policy to get that question. Could be addressed at a later time. Could she do it? Again, it's your meeting. It's committee's meeting.
Right, but I'm not talking about. I understand that we are prohibited from answering any questions or giving feedback to a member of the public. I get that. But my question is, if in the public section, or if Claudine chooses to recognize a single individual or on a single individual basis on a point of an agenda, which I believe she has that right to recognize individuals and maybe not the public at large, such that they could ask the superintendent, because I could see very easily people will be under distress for this COVID-19 once school starts up. And I think it would be unfair for them not to have the opportunity to ask a question to Jim or Bob, let's say it's Jim, and get a response. You following? Certainly the school committee membership can't, but I don't want to give them any, I'd like to give public the right to get feedback as quickly as possible, so long as they're communicating with Jim and Bob would, or Jim could answer their question extensively.
Yeah.
Hello?
So it's an agenda item, and we are under that agenda item. So if we were in person, and I would have the choice if I wanted to recognize a member sitting in the public to ask a question on the topic that we're discussing. So if Phil K was still on our meeting, Phil K is back. So if Phil K is on our meeting, which he's back, I could recognize him to ask his question, and I believe that it's actually.
Yeah, again, like the concern is with the Open Meetings Act, right? And it's maintaining, so it's not talking about things that aren't. I mean, that's the, and then generally speaking, that's the concern. Look, when there's no quote unquote discourse again between community members, that's to really preserve that, because it can get out of hand pretty quick. So. Again, this is the committee's meeting. So if the committee wants to recognize someone to speak regarding a particular agenda item, you certainly have all the power to do that.
Doesn't quite answer my question, but perhaps you would like to revisit this question at the next meeting. How about that?
Sure.
All right. Maybe you can give us a more thorough understanding of how non-members of the committee might behave in a school committee meeting in the public. Thanks. Thank you.
Okay, I will provide you with a legal, so to speak. Again, there's the Open Meetings Act is. I mean, it's fairly broad, right? I mean, it governs how. The point is to make sure that the public. That the school committee's business is done out in public. That, as far as the agenda and speaking to on agenda items, that's pretty much what it's concerned with. Now, how the committee wants to run its meetings is a whole nother story. And based on the school committee policy, I don't know if the school committee does have a policy regarding this. So I would advocate for sticking with policy and running meetings in a particular fashion that are well, that again facilitates sticking with the agenda and also moving in a deliberate manner. So again, but at the end of the day, this committee runs the show. So you folks certainly, within the broad, ensuring that we're not stepping on anyone's toes with the Open Meetings Act. Can Mr. Ross speak? Sure. But again, if you like, I can provide you with more in depth at the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So just so everyone knows, to the public member that's on Phil K, I responded, please reach out to our superintendent. Okay. I think we're all set. Everybody's good with the reopening plans? No more questions? Okay. Let's go to capital project update and bond discussion. We have a resolution that we need to review and vote on. Bob, do you have the lead on that? Or Jim? It's Bob.
Yep. So in working with our legal counsel, they pointed me to Karen Grande of Lock Lord LLP. And Lock Lord does a tremendous book of business with Ryback, so they're very familiar with the whole what it takes for municipalities and for school districts to try and get enabling legislation done, and the whole process of dealing with that bureaucracy up there, if you will, and in a just not in a purgative way, but just, you know, getting through the hoops that you need to get through. In the first one, what started with the conversation was I sent, coming out of the building committee, sent the letters of support from both towns, Exeter and West Greenwich, which were roughly in the $17.8,400,000 range, in $40,000 range. So with that in hand, she said those are great, but in order for her to move it to the General Assembly, they're going to want it in this type of format, which she typed up for Exeter, West Greenwich, and for the school committee. Each one has a you know, unique to their town or entity. And that's what you have in front of you right now, the memorializing resolution for the $17.8,040,000 bond.
Okay, anyone have any questions?
Well, not on the bond, but I have a question on projects, Bob.
Okay.
Okay, let's do the bond first. Any questions on the resolution? Everybody's good?
Well, I have a question on the resolution. This is merely to, so I better understand this. Is this being submitted to the legislature for approval for 17 million? Is that what this is about?
No, it's being, so the action by the town councils and the school committee on this will demonstrate to the legislature that the towns and the schools are in support of the bond, and that it now can go on the referendum once they approve the enabling legislation. So it's not the vote on the bond, it's the process to allow the bond to be become a voter referenda.
Okay. So it's just, I think I got it. It just says, hey, this resolution just says this is to put this number on the referendum, period. That's its intent, Bob?
Correct.
All right, I get that.
Correct.
So it's just makes it a referendum item.
Right.
I got it. Thanks.
I'll make the motion to approve the resolution memorializing the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing the Exeter West Greenwich Regional School District to issue not to exceed $17,840,000 general obligation bonds and notes to finance the renovation, rehabilitation, improvement, furnishing, and equipping of schools and school facilities throughout the district.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Everybody's good? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen,
I'm going to abstain because I haven't even read this yet. I'm just going to abstain. I didn't
Okay.
get my packet until after work, which was about 15 minutes before this meeting started, so I haven't read any of it.
Okay. Let's see. Member McFadden?
I'm going to abstain too because you know what's confusing to me, and I'm just going to vote as a confused member, is that I did get the packet and I did read this, and it doesn't sound like Bob's explanation is consistent with the language of the motion. So you have a majority right now. It's going to carry, but I'm going to abstain as well.
Okay, and I'm an aye. So motion carries.
I'm not done with this whole section here.
No, yeah,
so.
I know. Okay, so we're all set with the let's see, the resolution on the obligation bond. So let's go to the capital project update. So Bob, before you talk, let's get some updates from Bob.
So we'll do the projects that are going on currently. The Martone continues to do the perform their work at the Metcalf School, and they should be, again, they're targeting getting out of here by the end of the week. So we'll wait to see how that plays out, but they're moving along. And again, a lot of their work is going, fabrication is happening off-site, and then they're bringing it and installing it. The bigger project, the boiler, they actually have received the boiler in sections, and they're beginning the assembling of that. But more importantly, they received the oil pumps and ancillary equipment that runs the boilers, the controllers, which will, you know, we thought that was going to lag, but it came in early, so they're in great shape. And if you want to see a boiler put together, go over there and take a look at it, because it's a lot of hunking steel. But
I'll take you up on that invitation, Bob.
all right. So it comes in sections, so they're putting that together. So that all looks good. We're feeling very good about that. On what's today, the 8th, 9th, on the 10th, we have a pre-meeting, Zoom meeting with our friends up at the Ride School Business Authority to review the stage 1 and 2 submittal, which are in good shape. We should expect that they're going to come back and ask for some cleanup, but that's fine. That's all part of the dance that we'll do. And other than that, I think we're in good shape.
Period. So this is where I can say something.
Period.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Paul.
So returning to the bond, when should the voters expect to see the bond on the ballot? Is it November? Is that what you're shooting for?
So the goal was to try to get it to November. The that's all in all likelihood is not going to happen. Just the timeline is much too tight. However, there is some feeling out there that the state isn't even going to be ready for their referenda on October 3rd, and that they'll be waiting to see how the national elections go so that they can see what the financial package might be for bailing out the states. And then that way they will know what kind of bonding they're going to have to do. So what does that mean? That means that there could be a special election before the first of the year, but after the national election. But nobody knows the answer. That's just speculative right now.
So this would be what you're thinking is, well, let's just say the timeline doesn't work for November, right?
Correct.
So you're thinking that there would be a special bond ballot election before the first of the year in Exeter or West Greenwich?
No, the way that I understand it, it was explained to me that the state might call a special election after the November 3rd national election.
Oh,
And if the state calls a special election, then we could, if the school committee wants, we could put it on that election, which would in all likelihood happen before January 1. If that doesn't happen, say everything I just explained doesn't happen, and we don't get on the November 3rd, then we would probably be targeting somewhere between January and February 14th. But we would have to wait and see. And then I guess as soon as we have approval for the enabling legislation, then it's up to the committee to determine a date. Maybe that's a better way to say it.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. Let's see. We'll move on. So we have important dates and meetings. Monday, September 14th is the first day of school. Grades 1 to 12 and pre-K and K with parents, or it's an orientation. And then Tuesday, September 15th, all grade levels attend. Tuesday, September 22nd, we have a school committee meeting.
Just one
Yeah,
clarification, Claudine. Melissa and the kindergarten team actually extended the orientation for a couple of days so that they could get parents in smaller groups.
Okay.
So it's just a minor clarification, but the pre-KK orientation is going to be 2 days, and the kids will go for their first day of school alone with the teacher on 16th instead of 15th.
Okay. Very good. And that's an excellent idea. Okay. We do not need executive session. So if we can have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call vote. Member Kissinger,
Aye.
Member Donovan,
Aye.
Member Green,
Aye.
Member Allen,
Aye.
Member McFadden.
aye.
Okay, and I'm an aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You
Thank
too.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you.
God. Do you want to go get ice cream?
This sounds good. Let's go.
Oops, sorry. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Cheryl.